Well, good evening. We'll get started here in a moment. But glad to see you out on a midweek Wednesday night. Welcome. Good to have a little bit of moisture hit our area just a few minutes ago. So this summer we have been working on family themes. Last week was on the topic of dating. I thought that was invigorating. Great night. Hopefully some benefit to those with teens and to our teens. Tonight after our meeting, we've been invited to go down to the gym for an ice cream social that the youth groups put together for us and for the young children. And then today, this is a sneaker, it's Dr. Brian Malick's 60th birthday today. So we have added a cake to the mix down in the gym. So we'll slip down right about 8 o'clock. So the way tonight's gonna go, I'm gonna give a little bit of an introduction on the topic of communication. It's just not for marriage, it's just in general principles for life. So this is applicable to all of us regardless of your status when it comes to marriage. After I give the introduction, I'm going to keep the men here. We'll just meet here, and I'll just share a few more thoughts on communication. Elisa is going to meet with the ladies in room 109 just for about 20, 25 minutes. So ladies there, men here, and then we'll bring the women back, and we'll just do a topic, just a question and answer on communication within the home. And once that's finished, we'll pray a little bit, and then we'll head down to the gym for the ice cream and special cake with Brian. So why don't we pray, and we'll jump right in here tonight. Heavenly Father, thank you for this evening. Thank you for being our Father and how you've communicated to us in so many ways through creation. You communicate to us an external message, how the heavens declare your glory. We think of an inward message of the conscience and how your moral law is written within our very fiber so that we know when we do right or wrong. And then thank you for the written revelation, the scriptures that we're going to look at here in a moment. Thank you for being a God of perfect communication. And so speak to us tonight, and may we speak to you in prayer. Bless this time on the topic of communication, if we pray in Jesus' name, amen. So I share with you that we're going to be studying from the book of Song of Solomon. That was kind of the way this was billed, communication in SOS, Song of Solomon. And you think of the author, humanly speaking, is Solomon. And you can't help but think about the family that he grew up in. When it comes to the topic of communication, you know, what type of communicator was his dad? His dad's David. David was a great communicator. David, you know, was a shepherd boy converted to king, but he was very gifted in communication. How many Psalms do we have that he wrote? So he was a great writer, a great communicator. And so Solomon is really going to benefit from growing up in that kind of environment with a dad like his dad. So tremendous communication going on from the dad to others, and Solomon certainly would glean some of that. And Solomon will actually, in many ways, excel his father with his communication. Is a lot of books, 3 books and a couple Psalms that Solomon has penned for us. So great communicator. He had 1,005 songs. We only have this one that was inspired, but he was an avid writer, great communicator. And he was a wordsmith, to say the least. So we want to talk about communication. His father communicated, and he learned from it. Well, Solomon's going to meet the Shulamite, and I'm curious, what kind of communication skills did she learn from her family? Because communication, so much of it's learned in the home, the good, the bad, the ugly. And in the 8th chapter, where we'll start tonight, some of the influences in her life included her brothers. And we're just going to talk a little bit about their communication skills. Then her mother, her father, we don't know much about. It appears that he had died. She's called the daughter of she's a princess daughter. So she grew up in some type of royal lines, and it looks like things fell apart there in the home front. It seemed to get quite dysfunctional. So the father's out of the picture, and in their culture, when a father died, that oldest son, especially in the other brothers in this case, when you had daughters or sisters, they stepped it up or they were to step it up and play a kind of a fatherly role. So in the eighth chapter, you have the brothers speaking about their little sister in verse 8, and they're concerned about her moral purity, and they're thinking ahead for her as to the day when she should be spoken for. So they knew that likely she would be, someone would want to marry her. And so they're thinking about that future event, and in view of it, they wanted to make sure that she came to that time pure and a really attractive partner for some man. And so this vision of moral purity was then going to be communicated to her by the brothers. They were involved in safeguarding her integrity there. She had a responsibility, but they felt very obligated to look after little sister. So in verse 9, if she be a wall, we will build upon her a palace of silver. So these brothers were saying, look, if you are impervious to the advances of men, you keep yourself morally pure, then you meet that condition, then we're going to reward that. And we're going to build, as it says here, her a palace, a silver palace. Wow, that's pretty extravagant. And so a very significant value statement being made here, if indeed she remained a wall. She was closed to the advances of men in the area of morality. So tremendous teaching there in communication in the home for parents. Kids, there's a, God honors those who do right, those who walk uprightly, no good thing will I withhold from them, the Lord says. He honors good decisions and moral integrity, and you can expect him to reward. And we need to build more on that theme of when our kids are doing right, to reward them. Often it's rather negative, and we just build on the negative side of things and forget, wow, let's reward them when they've done something well. However, if she be a door, if she is open to the immoral advances of men, if she be a door, we will enclose her of boards of cedar. So what they're saying here, okay, if she does not say no to these men and she opens herself up to moral failure, then we're going to up the ante. We're going to increase the accountability. We're going to go to even greater lengths to see this not repeated, and to really help her to, from that day forward, to be morally pure. And so there's a lot of teaching going on here regarding moral purity issues, and communications being generated here by some brothers in this case, in many ways taking the role of a father. Of course, verse 10, she gives her assessment that this communication, this reward and punishment consequence, did motivate her to remain pure. She says, I'm a wall. So she was taught prior to puberty. You can see that through the passage before you, regarding the goal to go when you're being asked to be married, that you go to that special occasion and into that marriage union as someone who's morally pure. So she got that message very early on. So that the timing for communication here is important. I remember my mother in whatever grade, 7th grade, I think, or 8th grade. It was really my dad's responsibility, but he deferred to my mom, or my mom just took the initiative to talk about the birds and the bees. And she said, Will, as she took me home from, I think, football practice, I want to talk about the birds and the bees. And I said, well, sure, Mom, let's talk about it. What do you need to know? Wise guy, wise guy. And the reality was, it was way too late in 7th grade. And that was back when I was in 7th grade. And unfortunately, our children today, our young people, are being inundated with this topic in the locker rooms, in the hallways, and on out wherever. And it's very, very twisted and very, very just unclean. And it's a shame that our children's innocence is being violated. It's violated, and information given to them at ages is just unimaginable. It's just tragic. And this is where it's important, if you're a parent and your kids are in a school, especially public school, you better know what those curriculums look like and when when they are introducing these type of topics and how they're presenting it, and what's being communicated, and what is seen as right. Is it right to have two moms? Two women married, is that right? And you see that in the textbooks, and it's just disgusting. So this girl here, as a little sister, she was communicated with some expectations, some rewards, some consequences if disobeyed. And at the end of the day, she says, I'm a wall. She made it to marriage morally pure. You also have the influence in her life of her mother. In chapter 7, verse 2, I would leave thee, she says to Solomon, and bring thee into my mother's house, who would instruct me. And it seems quite naturally that she was accustomed to a mother that took the time to instruct her on how to be a lady, how to be a woman, how to be a helpmate to a man in a variety of areas that the mother communicated with her. And even in these areas of intimacy, there's some openness in their conversation, even on some more sensitive topics where the mother would instruct her. And so very impressive to see this communication within her home. So when you take the two homes of Solomon over here, learning from David, a great writer and communicator, and over in her home, you have brothers who are communicating. They may not have always communicated well. Earlier in the book, chapter 1, she says, my mother's children were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyards, but my own vineyard have I not kept. So there was some anger there. There's some unresolved issues for sure. But these brothers did try to communicate some things. And this topic of purity, that's a great topic. Good for them. They did a good job. And then the mother also did what she could in communicating with her daughter. And I think, daughters need to have a good relationship with mom, and certainly a good relationship with their father. I think both are very significant in the life of a daughter. So communication in the home, just introducing the topic. So this couple, they have a lot going for them. They have a lot of background that was healthy, and they're going to build on that. And this book here is a book of amazing communication between Solomon and the Shulamite. And I'm going to share some of those communication things with the guys. Elisa is going to share a few of those principles on communication with the ladies. We'll come back, and Elisa and I will field a couple questions, if you'd like, on the topic of communication. We do not claim to be perfect in communication. The Lord certainly knows that, and so do we. All right, so ladies, if you can follow Elisa Jane down to room 109 for about 20 minutes, and then we'll be back here at about 7:25. Would that be 27? Let's say 7:20 at the latest. 7:20 at the latest, and we'll regroup at that point. So folks who are on Zoom, if you're on as a couple, you're stuck with me tonight, which is just fine. You'll miss out on Elisa's lecture to the ladies' topics, which are very well articulated. She went over all of her notes with me, and they're beautiful. If I was a guy, I would probably want to go with her too, to listen to her part rather than my part. But please join her if you can. Yes. Okay, so we'll start the Zoom down there too? Okay, so if you're on Zoom, the guys can, ladies, you can Zoom. That's on the website, Ladies Bible Study. So if you go to the website, if you're a lady on Zoom, go to Trusting Hearts, click on that. Just give them a moment. I sprung this on them, the division of rooms tonight. So please join the ladies. If you're a lady, men, please stay here. Often ladies want to hear what the men are getting, and sometimes the men want to hear what the ladies are getting. In our state, we have a little bit of history of that with John Dyer ministering up in the Breckenridge area. He'd go into bars and he'd preach, and had quite an itinerant ministry. And then he had a lady join him at one point, a lady evangelist, and she would go into these mining communities and go into the same bars and preach to the men, and she forbade the women to be in the meetings. And so the wives got really ticked off at this lady evangelist. What is she saying to my husband? And so they try to sneak in and hear words from the lady evangelist. Okay, let's just talk through Song of Solomon for a moment. I'll stay up here just for visibility for the Zoom people and the audio part of this. But if you can start with me in chapter 1, there's so much dialogue going on, but I'm going to just focus on Solomon's communication with the Shulamite, his part. It doesn't surprise us when you go through the book that the majority or the larger portion of verses are ascribed to the Shulamite. She's the primary spokesperson in the book. Doesn't mean that she's dominating Solomon, but she just talks more. So I'm curious, if you are married, how many would say my wife probably talks more than I do and probably would like me to talk more? Myself, who would say that? All right, so that's the majority of us at this present time. So folks, you can't see the hands here, but one hand that didn't go up was Rudy Ryberg. So that's important. So Rudy's hand didn't go up. Rudy and Diane talk a lot together, which is a blessing. And congratulations, they're about 1 year, 2 weeks into their marriage. All right, so the Shulamite does the majority of the speaking, Solomon the second, and then the daughters of Jerusalem and the brothers and the narrator come into their parts. Also, in verses 1 through 7, she's the one speaking, other than the introduction, verse 1, the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. But it's all about communication. In verse 7, she says, "Tell me, O thou whom my soul loveth, where thou feedest, where thou makest thy flock to rest at noon. For why should I be as one that turns aside by the flocks of thy companions?" So she's saying, tell me, talk to me, communicate with me. I need to know some things. I need to know, where you're going to be, what you're doing, where are you working, where are you going to be tomorrow at like lunchtime, at noon? What's your work schedule? When can I expect you to be home? When are we going to have some time together? And there's just a lot of questions that she has here. And the tone of the text, she's a little bit frazzled. He's not communicating. She does not feel in the loop. And she says, why should I be like these harlots that are out in the fields trying to get the attention of your fellow workers? They go to great effort in their dress and their manner to get their attention. And why do I have to go to great efforts to get your attention? And so in this text, it's obvious that he is deficient in his communication, at least from her perspective. And this is so often the case where you just feel, there are times the wife just doesn't feel in sync with us at all. We're out of the loop, or they feel like they're out of the loop. So how often, if you are married, how many times do you get that message where, what can I expect? When are you gonna be home? So when the other night, other morning, I was going out, we were scouting for animals early, and how soon will you be back for breakfast? I said, I think 30 minutes, 35 minutes, maybe. And she said, that's an hour. That's an hour. Just double whatever we say. I'll be out in the shop for whatever, double it, just double it. I'll be home, double it. And she doubled it. I didn't think we'd be back that late, but actually it was an hour and a half, So it was 2 times what I gave her, so not good. So communication, notice the topics of communication, scheduling, timing, work. This is important to communicate, even whether you're married or not, to communicate with people. So whenever we go back to see our families, it's a long way back here. Flights, rental cars, connections, people picking us up, weather conditions. Our last time we flew in, we had to do multiple circles out over the southern part of the state because it was so treacherous in the air conditions, So when we get home, we always communicate. We always text or call, hey, Mom, or hey, whoever, John, Jim, Ben, whatever, we're safe. We made it home. We always are communicating and trying to communicate. I send out regular emails to the entire family, to my kids, to my daughter-in-laws, to other family members about any event. So don't leave anyone out. We're planning to be at such and such a place at this time. We'd love to see the family meet here at this point. And we just send this multiple copies out because sometimes people say, hey, I didn't know you left me out. I would have loved to have been there at that family get-together. I didn't know you were doing that. So communicating about schedules. for my wife and I, we have to talk about schedules. We have to talk about it. We're on too many highways, too many interstates, too many lanes we're driving down. We have to communicate regularly on those topics. He, in this section to follow, is going to respond to her. And in verse 8, he says, if thou know not, if you don't know where I'll be, if you don't know my schedule, if you don't know these type of things, he's then going to give her the answer. If you don't know, and then he's softening his response by calling her, O thou fairest among women. So very important how he makes it very clear that he loves her, that she is very special. He's very, very careful not to say things that would undermine further the stress. Yes, sir. No, they're not married at this point. In my understanding of the book, it is progressive. It's a song with its cycles, with choruses, a chorus repeated. My understanding is that chapter 1:1 all the way to 3:5, they're single. Chapter 3, verse 6 to verse 11 is the wedding day, the processional that's described there. Chapter 4, verse 1 to chapter 5, verse 1 is the wedding night. And 5:2, the end of the chapter, is their marriage. And sometimes it seems the blur. Sometimes it seems a blur a little bit. Boy, it sounds like the language of marriage or whatever. She's pretty aggressive here. In the context, she's in Jerusalem. She's sensing the presence of other women who are attracted to Solomon. And she's telling the daughters of Jerusalem, verse 6, be generous, be gracious. Feel like I'm in a fishbowl. Look not upon me because my skin has been suntanned. I've obviously been working in the fields. I'm a field hand. It's by necessity. Give me a break. Give me some grace. But she's there and she feels very lonely. And you're going to sense whether they're married or not. You're going to feel this tension in the book that this man is extremely busy. He's working. He's a king. And she just wants to be with him. Not that he doesn't want to be with her, but he's got obligations. And this is really putting a lot of pressure on the relationship to just have time together. That is a challenge in marriage, just having time together. So here he tells her to go her way forth by the footsteps of the flock and feed thy kids beside the shepherd's tent. So his response to her, he's going to make sure she's provided. He's going to give direction to her. He's not always going to be able to be with her, but he's going to make sure she's cared for. And so that may not have been the exact answer she wanted. She probably wanted to know at noon, I'll meet you at Starbucks, or I'll meet you at a restaurant or whatever. That wasn't the exact answer that he gave, and probably not the answer she wanted. But okay, he does care. He thinks highly of me. He's providing. He's protecting. And then he goes on to praise her for her beauty, verse 9. And then he does some very nice things for her as to jewelry and dress. No replacements or substitutes for time with her. You can't buy her love. But he is very, very thoughtful and very generous. And he has a large budget to work with, which makes a little bit of a difference, but he's very gracious. So anyway, there's questions coming up, and there's answers that need to be given. And in the topic of communication, we're all asked questions, whether it's at work, whether it's with a friend, whether it's at church, and we've got to give answers. We've got to give answers. And those answers often relate to your schedule. Do I have time to do this? Do I have time to do this? I need to communicate. Can I do this? My son, Jim, dropped in last night, spent the night with us, and just keep encouraging him. You don't have to say yes to everything. You don't have to say yes to everything. And he told a salesman, he said, wherever you go, whatever wood product they want, say yes, and we'll figure it out later. Just say yes. We need the business so bad. Just say yes. We can do it, and we'll figure it out. But what if we can't? Don't worry about it. Just say yes. I'm saying, oh boy, maybe that'll work up front, but I don't know if that should be the long-term sales plan. Just say yes. Sometimes you just need to say no. So you have this type of communication going on regarding schedules and some plans. You come to chapter 2, I think there are times where you need to prepare your answer and you prepare your presentation. What would be some topics where you need to prepare your communication in advance? What are some contexts in which I've got to really be ready to give a good answer here? What would be some topics where that type of communication, we're really got to prepare in advance? Okay, Troy? Okay, so job interview, on both sides. If you're the interviewer, you better have your questions and things you want to ask. If you're the one being interviewed, you better anticipate some questions related to the industry you're looking into. Yep, very good. Very good. Other topics where you probably better be prepared to communicate, have some information up front. Know what you're going to say. Rudy. A large purchase, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, the talk through the potential purchase. Our dishwasher just went out. You don't realize how much you use it until they die. And so we went to look for a dishwasher, and I tried to list a couple questions. I got the right measurements. You better have the measurements. You know, so I knew the box size I needed. We did a little bit of consumer reports on the fly. So I had a couple questions, you know, that you learn. And when you meet someone that knows their stuff, you learn more information, more questions maybe to ask if you pursue the hunt. The biggest challenge right now is if you want a dishwasher, how long do you think it's going to take till it's delivered and installed? How many? 8 months? Could be. Could be. It was very discouraging. So we went to Lowe's, and we found several dishwashers that would have worked, and the reviews were good. And so we said, okay, I think she would like this one here. He said, well, let me check, see if we have it in stock. He said, I'm sorry, we don't have that in stock. Okay, well, let's go to this one then. What about this one? And he said, no, I'm sorry, I'm looking. No, it's not here. It's not in stock, but there's one in Brighton. If you hurry, maybe you can get it. Okay, what about this other one over here? No, I'm sorry, it's not in stock. I said, well, what do you have in stock? Two of them, of whatever 20 options, and one was way too expensive, one was way too cheap. So I said, all right, thanks. We went to another store, same song and dance. And the lady said to us, well, we can get it to you on July, whatever Friday was last week. No, this Friday, or this week. No, this Monday, yesterday, 2 days ago. Yeah, and I said, the 11th, wow, it's 11. Okay, we can wait a couple weeks. And so we signed the bottom line, and then maybe a week later, we get the text or the email or the phone call that says, maybe both, we're not able to deliver the dishwasher on this date. It's going to be another several weeks. We're having problems with the transit. You know, 5 years ago, if you wanted to buy a dishwasher, how long would it be turned around? When you go to the store, and how soon? Maybe a day, maybe upwards of 3 would be really, really long wait. We're in a whole different world. So you better have your questions. What am I going to ask? Communicate. If you're going into a medical appointment, my, oh my, you better have your questions ready, because that doctor might come in for all of, 5 minutes maybe? Everyone else is there working, but the doctors, it's hard to get a doctor pinned down to answer questions. You better think through what you're going to ask to communicate. What's another thing you might want to be ready to know what you're going to say? Ellen? On what? Finances, sure. The whole topic of finances, the information, questions. In context of chapter 2, this is romance. What do you think in the area of romance? You better be prepared to know what to say if you're a man. Any thoughts? Oh, honey, I was wrong. Okay, so possibly some of that, honey, I was wrong. If you've been married, did you think about what you were going to say when you were going to propose to your bride-to-be? So she remembers exactly what he said. Let's look at it. So verse 10, my beloved spake and said unto me, rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away, for lo, the winter is past, the rain is over and gone. The flowers appear on the earth, the time of the singing of birds has come, and the voice of the turtle is heard in our land. The fig tree putteth forth her green figs, and the vines of the tender grape give a good smell. Rise, my love, my fair one, and come away. That's an invitation. That's a proposal. And he's thought through, I mean, this is beautiful. This is magical. This is poetical. This is, would you marry me and come and rise and come with me? Join me in life. And notice that she remembers exactly what she said. My beloved spake, and this is what he said to me. Word for word, she remembers that. And so he was prepared with what to say, and it really made a difference in her heart and relationship to him. What are some other areas that you might be, you need to be prepared to share answers, information? Anything else? So prep work's very important, can help you in communication, thinking before you have a conversation with someone. What am I going to say? Sometimes you might have to write it out. What I'm going to say. Sometimes you write it out and you don't meet with the person and you don't send that email. You just put it in a drawer, but it helps you communicate your thoughts, at least to self, and analyze it and say, this is maybe not one I should send now. So some preparation and communication. In this passage here in chapter 2, again, she's doing the majority of the speaking throughout the chapter. But when you see their communication, they're really thoughtful. There's kindness that is shared back and forth, reciprocating praise, very, very tender, very generous, very gracious thoughts towards one another. In fact, you're going to be hard-pressed to find one harsh word in the whole book. When you come to Song of Solomon, I mean, this couple is really, really good with their words. And I wish I was this good as Solomon, and your wife probably wishes she was as good as the Shulamite. But there are times that we say things we don't mean. We say things that are inflammatory, not good. And that's just not within marriage. You can lose it at the job place and say things, man, I wish I hadn't said that. Oh, wait, man, and in some cultures, work cultures, you air it out. You yell and scream. And do any of you have that kind of culture where they just want you to yell and scream at each other about the problems, and then you solve it and move on, and you don't think much about it? Do any of you have that kind of culture? I'm just curious, Troy. Yeah. Yeah, terrible communication, but if you're from the Northeast, you're from New York in that area, that's just kind of maybe how you do business, right? I mean, I'm guessing New York. Yeah, sure. That's just the culture. And with our staff, I have several times met with the whole staff and said, look, we have different cultures even in this room. Karen Price is from New York. She's got some New York in her. Can you imagine that? She's got some real New York in her. And we tease her unmercifully about, New York, blunt, direct, whatever. Then you have the Southern, you have the Southern culture, and they just beat around the barn. You have no idea what they're saying. They never come out and say it. It's always guessing, what do they mean by that? Where some people are more blunt, more direct. I'll never forget, we were having a prophecy conference, and I had at least 3 evangelists from the Mideast. One was from Beirut, Lebanon. One was from, I think, Alexandria, Egypt, and one was from maybe Jordan. And I was so excited to have these guys together. We went to this fancy restaurant called Shoney's, and we're having a nice dinner together. And they all yelled and screamed at each other the whole meal. I felt like, it was Armageddon. I mean, they were just loud and opinionated, and they argued, and everyone was right in their own eyes. And I just wanted to get out of the room and hide. And these were very prominent evangelists. You probably would know some of the names. And I'm saying, I said to myself, and afterwards to Elise, I said, honey, they could not get along to save their lives. And I said, so wonder we've got a problem in the Mideast. The there's 3 Christian brothers. We couldn't even have a nice meal at Shoney's. But at the end of that conversation, that didn't faze any of them, kind of like the New York, whatever, that culture. That's just the way they did life. Loud, strong, opinionated, in each other's face. End of the day, they paid for one another's meals and went on. I mean, they were friends. I'm thinking, wow, that's just not how we do it. We had a counseling situation unrelated to here, and the way the family, they would just yell at each other and scream at each other, and then talk through the problem and smile and move on. I don't want to work that way. I don't want to be yelled at, and I don't want to scream at someone. That's not how I want to do marriage, but that's how some people do it. I don't think it's a good plan, but that's often how it's done. Often how it's done. So as you work for this whole book, just some general principles, my oh my, they're just so gracious to one another, and that doesn't repel. It draws. It attracts. It allows a context for really communicating. And when you get into this book, we're talking about some very in-depth and very intimate communication. You think about most of our communication, how deep is it? So what are the topics we as men just kind of superficially bounce around as we communicate? Any thoughts? What are some topics? They're not wrong. I enjoy them. You do too. Sports, yeah. Did anyone watch the All-Star game last night? I watched the last maybe inning and a half. I didn't know one name of one player. It's the only baseball I've watched, I don't know, maybe years and years. I didn't know one All-Star name. It was really embarrassing. I didn't know one name. You go back into the 60s at all their cards. I knew all their names. I could tell you how many home runs Roger Maris had and Mickey Mantle had. I could give you the stats and the names and the numbers, and the teams. I didn't know a number. But sports, we talk about sports. Okay. What else do we talk about? Oh, ouch. Okay, motorcycles. Okay, love motorcycles. I love them. Troy and I, we just raced together. We had so much fun together. We talked a lot about motorcycles. Yep, okay. What else? Work, sure. Work, your occupation, your profession. What else? Talk about family. That's a little more intimate. That's going a little deeper. The leave sports and our hobbies and whatever. What else might we talk about? So yeah, Brother Kevin. What's that? Optics? Politics, thank you, yeah. Politics, sure. And these are great topics, and we should talk about them. There's a place for all that. But to have a more intimate, more in-depth relationship with, let's say, men with men, friends, where should it go? Where would you hope where are some of the levels you'd like to get to? I just had my nephew that was with us. They came in on a Friday, left on a Monday, whatever that is. That's a long time, 10, 11 days. And they use our house as a launching pad for multiple trips. But we did have a lot of time with them. And it was really great. I had the privilege of leading Ryan to the Lord a number of years ago. Neat to see his wife. She knows the Lord. Their son got saved and baptized. My own saved brother-in-law was there at the service. Really neat stuff. So we were together. We had some great meals and times to talk. But it wasn't until the end of the week that we really got into any depth. It was so shallow, superficial, friendly, nice, warm. But finally, he felt safe to open up to Uncle Will a little bit, and for Teresa to open up to Elise. But it took a whole week together to do that. So what are some of those topics that maybe we should hopefully get to if you're a friend, if you're building a friendship? What could be some of those topics of communication? Yeah, maybe some transparency that, hey, everything doesn't appear as it seems. I got some issues I'm dealing with. That's always a big step when you ask someone, would you pray for me? I'm having whatever, fill in the blank. Would you pray for me? That's a big step to reveal that about yourself. And that trust the person you're talking with, that they're going to handle that information prayerfully and carefully. That's a big step, especially for guys. That's a big step. So what else? Areas of communication. Yep, Brother Kevin. So Pastor Kevin's talking about some deaf ministries and be able to talk on a spiritual level about spiritual decisions regarding church and their commitment and things holding them back or whatever. That's a level of a deeper level to say, hey, to be honest, what's holding you back? What's going on here? Why, how do you assess things? I think to ask another person for counsel, that's a humbling thing. Hey, what do you think about this? How would you do this? That's a big step. A lot of guys would think that's weakness to seek counsel from another person. I don't think so. What do you think? What's your input on this? What's your counsel? I see a lot of guys, I'm trying to witness to a neighbor, and I bring up whatever topic, and he wants to top it every time, whatever the topic, he just wants to top it. And that's fine. I could care less. I'm not competing. I could care less what the scoreboard is. But it's very, very interesting that he has all these defense mechanisms that has to be seen as superior and great and flawless. And I'm thinking, oh, you don't have to be that way. You don't have to do that. We can just be friends. I'm pretty safe. Whatever. So you have this book here. It's going to go into some pretty in-depth communication between, in this case, the Solomon and Shulamite. In chapter 4, you have their honeymoon night, and verses 1 through 15 is Solomon, total communication, very much in tune with that whole context. But prior to that, he sent a message out talking about communication. This is their processional, likely from Jericho up into Jerusalem, and he's on this incredible ride where he has these iron men carrying he and his bride to be, on a what do you call these things? Where they're this platform, pelican, whatever you want to call it. And they're up there in a sedan in a chair that he's designed very, very intricately. Has pillars there. Verse 10 of chapter 3, the bottom thereof is gold. So that's got some weight to it. The pillars of silver, that's pretty hefty. The covering of it, quite royal purple, very expensive to get that color involved. The midst thereof being paved with love. And so there's love letters there that are kind of placed in view of the daughters of Jerusalem. It wasn't that he was saying, I love you, daughters of Jerusalem. He's saying, I love her who's sitting next to me, and we're going to the wedding altar, and I'm saying this about my love for my bride, and the message is for you daughters. So what's he communicating there? Park it? He's off the market. And he's the most eligible bachelor in the kingdom. And it's not like he hasn't married. He tells you he's already got a heap of wives that he inherited from his dad later there in chapter 6. But yeah, he's off the market. He's making it very, very clear. He's communicating to them that he has a unique relationship with her, and he did. So what are some ways we can communicate to the opposite gender that we're off the market? What are some of those off the market communication skills that you may have to enlist at times? All right, Kevin, go ahead. All right, wedding band. Why would you not wear your wedding band? Give me some reasons. There may be some. Maybe a foreign policy? Work policy, sure. Work policy. Yep. So I remember playing football, and our coach, his name was Chagrin, Coach Chagrin. We called him Shag Nasty, and he was nasty. I mean, you talk about communication. We learned words I didn't know about until Shag Nasty spoke. I mean, he was just nasty. But he was talking to the lineman, and one of the guys had a ring on his finger, and he said, if you're going to play on my football team, you are not going to wear a ring. And he told you why. Because back then, you would take your spikes and you would screw your spikes into his soles of your shoes, and it depended on the surface that you're playing on. You might have a 1/4 inch or whatever, or a 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch spike, and they were rubber. They weren't metal like a pitcher's spike. But those spikes, you have a 300-pound guy or a 250-pound guy land on that finger with that spike, your finger's coming off. So okay, playing football, probably not a good idea to wear that. Where else? Is there any other reason? Policy, safety. So that ring's very important. The guy takes his ring off for no reason other than what we maybe stated. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? That's a bad message. That's a bad message. Okay, excellent. Point one, communicate. I am married. What next? Give me some other communication skills. What do you do? Always talk about your wife and kids. In a positive way, thank you. Yeah, my wife, she's a real loser. I wish she was more like you. Yeah, no. That's not how you talk about your wife, right? You brag about your wife and you bring that into the conversation up front and quick. Just get that out there. Boy, I'm married. Boy, this is great to meet with you, but man, my wife, I'm so thankful. Okay, so you communicate. What's another way, a nonverbal way of communicating you're married other than the ring? So if you came into my office, I've got pictures. I've got pictures. I've got pictures on my phone. That's important. That's important. You can't miss it. Can't miss it. Okay. What are some other ways to communicate to the other opposite gender that I'm off the market? Anything else? You've got to be very, very careful. You got to be very, very careful of the opposite gender. I have some unsaved friends. I have some saved friends that are women from junior high, high school, even college. And I have some witnessing opportunities there with my classmates. But I share, if I'm doing an evangelistic effort to win someone or a group, my wife knows about it. My wife knows about it. So I've got a reunion in October, my 45th high school reunion. I've not been to one, probably won't go to this one, but it doesn't mean I can't witness to them. Again. And I'll tell you what hurts is when you see your classmates and they have a banner of the classmates that are no longer here. And each year that list gets bigger and there's more names on the banner. That hurts. That hurts. And it's really a shame, but I'll tell you what, when a classmate dies, I'm on the websites for my two high schools, Downingtown High School and Twin Valley High School. When a classmate dies, I'm immediately writing about that. Something encouraging, something spiritual, something would point to the Lord. And I'm not claiming to be the epitome or the paragon of all virtue here. I'm not saying it for that purpose. I'm just saying I have an opportunity here to a classmate. I have an opportunity. But if I write a letter, if I have an email, if I'm in an interview, man, I'm communicating. My wife. I love her. And if she's married, I will always say something to the effect, boy, I've enjoyed talking with you and I would love to meet your husband. He must be quite a guy, whatever. I'm always going to brag on him. If I meet with them, I'm going to try to get focus to the husband. I don't want to get entangled on the other side of this thing. I love my wife too much. I like what Joseph said. I fear God. I love God too much. I can't do this sin against my God. I'm going to be faithful. So communication, very important between the genders. One of the first things we did when we came, we put a window in the pastor's office. So there are times I was witnessing to a lady today, probably not a threat to our marriage. She's in her 80s or whatever. But I still like that window open. I still like that window that is there. I still like telling the office. We try to minimize guys and girls alone here in the building. We try to do that best we can. And sometimes it doesn't happen. We're very, very careful on that. Okay, so communication, very important. And he's sending a message out there, chapter 3. Chapters 5 to the end of the book, you have a number of things going on. They do have some problems in their marriage. And I'd like to come back to this topic for married men. There was a breakdown in their communication regarding sex, just that blunt. The one flesh relationship, they didn't communicate well. That was the first problem in their marriage, was a breakdown in communication regarding that part of their marriage. And I think that's a very, very common problem, not at the beginning of marriage. It could be a problem throughout the entire marriage, or it can cycle through the marriage. And so that area of communication, how do you communicate? What should you say? What should you not say? This is the classic chapter 5 and 6. Chapter 7, again, just a lot of praise going on, back and forth. And then chapter 8 is largely the Shulamite speaking until you get to verse 13 that nearly ends the book. He says that thou that dwellest in the gardens, the companions hearken to your voice, cause me to hear it. So what he's saying here to the Shulamite, I'd like to hear those nice things that you're saying. I'd like to be complimented. I'd like to be commended. I'd like to hear those things that you share with your companions. Cause me to hear it. I would like to hear those things. And then she ends, make haste, my beloved, and be thou like to a roe or a young hart upon the mountain of spices. So again, she is, there's distances between them at times geographically. He's away. She looks forward to him to come quickly. It's kind of like how the Bible ends, come quickly, Lord Jesus, where we, the bride, want our heavenly groom to come and come quickly. And the time in between may be like the mountain here of spices, maybe still pleasant because we have communion with him, but we look forward to that day that will be with the Lord. Okay, let's stop here for a moment. Any comments on communication? And ladies should be with us in a second or two. Wow, look at this. Here they come. Here they come. Or at least Karen comes. Are they following? Karen, I talked behind your back about you, speaking of communication. Yeah, I did. I talked about you. So what did I say about Karen? She is from where? No, actually, it's a beautiful area. Karen, we were talking about cultures and talking about the different people from different regions. She's from upstate New York. That's a big difference than the Big Apple. Big Apple is a whole different world, really. But Karen does have some earmarks of the upstate New York, whereas you have some folks from the southeast, whatever. Okay. Was it a good time, ladies? Okay. All right. Amen. So Lisa Jane, if you'd come on up here, and we're going to just take a few moments on the topic of communication. And if you have some questions on it, you'd like us to kind of field a few of them before we pray, you come on up here. Unless Steve, Steve, it might help to have a microphone, but let's try it. We can take turns here, and I can adjust that. Okay. So any questions just on the topic of communication? Any questions, in this case, with a husband and wife? Any questions, comments? All right, Troy.
So we talked about ways that men can show their wives that they're off the market.
Okay.
So from the witness perspective, are there things that you would like to see in your husbands that let you know that they are off the market, that they are yours?
Okay, so the question for those on Zoom, in chapter 2, he says, as a lily among thorns, so is my love among the daughters. So he makes it very clear that she's very, very special here, and that all other women were thorns. So the question Troy asked is how she would like us to communicate as men, to say that we're married and we're content and don't come near, don't whatever. Okay, that's you. That's you.
Okay. He brought me to the banqueting house, and his banner over me is love. Chapter 2, verse 4. And so I think the way that a wife is treated in public settings can certainly mark
That's a
her.
banner, a flag.
Okay. So.
No, that's love. That's not loser.
Okay.
L-O, oh yeah.
Okay.
Keep going.
That's terrible.
No, it's good communication. All right, so the banner
Okay.
over me.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's right. So I think, yeah, how you treat your loved one sends a signal to a lot of people. If you're distant, if you're cold, if you're never seen together, that kind of leaves a wife to be hanging out to dry, so to speak. So an arm around her, taking her arm, being thoughtful, yeah. Being really careful.
Don't mug the poor girl.
Right? how you speak about each other. Again, it's about communication, how you speak to others.
If you kick under the table, make sure you kick the right leg.
That's always
Very
helpful.
important.
Okay, so I don't know if that's helping, but just
Yeah.
keeping that banner over your wife. Plus, I think that will warm the heart of your wife toward you when that takes place, when they see that it matters to you, that they that you show how much they belong to you. So
That's a great answer. So he brought me to the banqueting house, and his banner over me was love. And in context of the book, that message that she belonged to him and that he loved her wasn't done with what Rich just did, mugging his wife, squeezing her, because that would have been inappropriate in public. So in chapter 7, she says, I wish you were like my biological brother, because it's not inappropriate for me to kiss my brother in public, but it is inappropriate for me as your wife to kiss you in public. So that banner over her wasn't, just cozy. There was other ways he communicated in his respect and his love
it
there.
could have been his way of serving her first, um, that type of thing, or being cordial to others, but not overly cordial, kind. Um, so all of those things.
Good question and great text. Perfect verse to work with. Okay, other questions? Communication in marriage. Other thoughts? Feel like there's quite a gap here. Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah. Anyone else?
I left
Question?
my notes. On the other side.
Was there anything that Elisa shared that stood out to you as one of the ladies in her section on communication, something that was good? Okay, Marilyn? Yeah, you want to speak well of your spouse in public. Speak well. Yep.
That one means a lot to me because I grew up where my mother and father struggled. I think I shared that last week, but I did not know any husbands and wives who really were getting along, doing well until I started going to church on a regular basis, and there I met families that were unified and but up until then, that's what I thought wives did. They ran their husbands down.
Mhm.
When you're not in church and you are coming from the world, that's what you heard all the time. And looking back, a lot of those friends that I knew as a young person, their marriages, of course, didn't last. A lot of the people I knew and that I listened to, uh, their marriages failed.
Okay, good. Okay, Marilyn? Yes. So Marilyn has referenced, how important in public it is to be respectful and speak well, but in the home, even more so as your kids are watching, your attitudes and your responses and manner and words. Sure. Yeah, they're watching. They're watching. And they're smart. They know when things aren't going well. And no marriage bats 1,000. Let's be honest. There's no marriage at all times, at all places. You've responded always just perfectly.
I know our son John, one time, Will and I never wanted to, argue in front of our children or discuss things in front of our children or disagree. So we would go to our bedroom and shut the door. And I remember one time John came in and one of his friends said, "What are your mom and dad doing upstairs?" He goes, "Oh, they're fighting."
Ow.
So much for that, right?
Yeah, ouch.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
We try to limit the fights in front of the kids. Didn't always work that way, but most of the time we tried. Can we talk about this later? Okay.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure. Bill Huff is back with us. I think Bill, some great counsel. Husbands and wives, we don't remember things the same way. Is that true? You don't remember things the same way. My little silly motorcycle stories, at the end I wrote, if you remember these stories differently, please send me your correction. I'm sure your memory is better than mine, and I'll make whatever adjustment to the story. And that's a genuine appeal to my friends. If you remember stories better. But Bill taught me when we came here, a really neat thing to say, as I remember it, or I might be wrong, but this is how I remember it.
Uh-huh.
And that just clears the way for you to tell your story,
Okay.
without multiple interruptions saying, oh, honey, no, it was Tuesday, not Monday. It was October, not November, and all those different things. So I've used that, Bill, many, many times, where this is how I remember it. Yep. It's a good line. It's a really good communication line. Okay. Other questions? And then we'll pray here in a moment. We got time for maybe another one. Yes, Kenyatta. Yeah, this whole concept of falling in love and out of love is the topic Kenyatta is referencing. I think love is a choice. So that's important. I'm going to choose to love. So I'm going to choose to love as Christ loved the church. So that whole concept of in love, out of love, that's not going to be my main go-to for marriage.
I think
You want to
too,
comment on that?
on chapter 8
Yep.
and verse 6, I think gives the heart of these two people. Of Shulamite speaking, she says, set me as a seal upon thine heart, as a seal upon thine arm. For love is strong as death. The love they're talking about, it's as sure as dying. Jealousy is cruel as the grave, for the coals thereof are coals of fire, which have a most vehement flame. But verse 7, many waters cannot quench love, neither can the floods drown it. If a man would give all the substance of his house for love, it would utterly be condemned. So it's talking about true love, real love in the heart. It's going to be a love that withstands trials, floods, fire. It's something that is going to be very, very strong in a person's heart. So talk about motivating, falling in and out of love. When the heart is true, the love in your heart isn't going to be quenched and completely put down, as this verse is saying. Many waters cannot quench love. So trials may be able to make it difficult or harder, or questions, but true love isn't going to be quenched.
And true love's going to keep choosing to do the right things. Yeah, that's good. And this book is about 8 chapters of ongoing growing love. Each of them are looking to see if there's growth in the plants, if there's fruit on these. It starts off very tender, very vulnerable to the little foxes, but they look in chapter 7 there. She's asking about growth. So if anything, the love should be increasing and not stagnant. Let me turn page here. So she's talking about going down. Let's go up early to the vineyards. Let us see if the vine flourish, whether the tender grape appear, and the pomegranates bud forth. So they're constantly looking for development and growth. And in marriage, we can go backwards sometimes and by our choices, and we can get kind of stagnant at times. But this book is designed especially to help you keep growing in love, keep advancing in your relationship, and all the tools for that relationship and its growth are really in those 8 chapters. It's beautiful.
We also have the idea of maturing love, where finally the bride says, the one where in chapter 7, verse 10, I am my beloved's, and his desire is toward me. So there's this type of love where I can trust that he cares for me, or vice versa, that in the mature love, you don't have to wonder about who your spouse is and whether they desire you or not. Mature love helps you come to the place where uh, you understand that, and you appreciate it and receive it. Because in the beginning of this book, that wasn't there in that statement. What verse was that, Will?
For say it again.
The first one, there are 3 verses that,
Yeah, the first one, he is chapter 2, verse 6 or 7. I am his. He is me. He is mine, she says first. He is mine and I am his. And then the second time she flips, reverses it in chapter 6. I am his and he is mine, reverses that very possessive statement and puts it in the back part. And then she drops the possessive statement, he is mine, totally off. I am his and his desires toward me. So there's 3 times those phrases are used in one configuration or another. And there's a growing security in the relationship that's expressed with those 3 statements. Yeah. Okay, any other last question? And we'll pray here together. Any other question on communication? Okay. I don't see any. Well, let's get a couple partners together here and let's spend some time praying. And about 5 of 8, 3 of 8, I will close us in prayer. And then we're going to sneak down to the gym and surprise Brother Malik as we enjoy some cake and ice cream with the youth group. It's his 60th birthday. If you were not here earlier, we wish him a happy birthday. Okay, let's get a partner 2 and pray together.